Thank you for your sharing. I still don't understand. You've mentioned the solution is to use the dual currency system.
Complementary currencies.
Pardon?
Complementary currencies.
Yeah, but can you explain how can it be possible? Because I still don't understand in your PowerPoint slides. Thank you.
Okay. Basically, let me put it in slightly different words than I have done. What I'm suggesting is going from a monoculture, a monetary monoculture, which we now have on the world level, because all countries do the same thing the same way. They're all having their currency as a pine. They're all pines. They're big ones, small ones, but they're all pines. They're all the same nature, worldwide. And going from a monoculture to a monetary ecosystem. In an ecosystem, you have different currencies for different purposes, just like you have different plants that are having their niches. The example, an easy one, is for aging society in Japan, a time currency. By the way, this has now been introduced in St. Gallen, in Switzerland, the first European city to have done this. And we're in the process of introducing in Turnhout, in Belgium, a Fourier ecosystem here to adapt it to the local environment. That's for aging, the problem of aging. Having a motivation system that actually have people help elderly people to do things that are not covered by the medical care. Things like shopping, preparing food, things like that. That's everything that's not paid by the insurance company is payable in Fourier. That's one example. And I mean, every one of the examples are different. They're niches. Okay? They're different purposes, different currencies for different environments. Some of them will be good, some of them will be bad. When they're bad, they will die, and you can start another type with another application. Just like plants do in the forest. If you have someone in charge of taking away everything that is not a pine, which is what a central bank does, their job is to make sure that the monopoly is maintained in favor of the banks. Well, you never have the chance of anything emerging. So that's the difference. So I basically would say get rid of some laws. We're not talking nothing new. They would emerge spontaneously. And there are now 5,000 systems already in operation in a dozen countries. People are doing this, what I'm talking about, without asking permission. And the information age makes it possible, because it's much cheaper to do so than it ever was before. Does that answer your question? Thank you.
Here is another question. I will come to you.
Hi, thanks for coming and speaking to us. So basically, I think you're making the argument for dual currencies. There's lots of local currencies already.
Yes. Local is one type, one subset.
Yeah.
I'm also talking about the global currency.
And you're talking about time banks and many other things. Yeah. But basically, what I see is these maybe account for 1%, maybe less.
You're optimistic.
Yeah. So my question is, how do you ever see it getting to 20 or 30% of the population? And do you think that these types of alternative currencies need to be able to talk to each other? Because what I see is they're kind of all little silos everywhere.
Yeah. What we currently have is one subset of what I'm talking about, local currencies. Okay? I'm also talking about regional currencies, which are not local, that include a couple of million people. Most systems that you're mentioning have a maximum of 500 people active. That's fine. In an ecosystem, you have, little bugs that size. But we're also needing, rats and mice and elephants and everything in between. So, in other words, there's a variety of things. Okay? In the case of a neighborhood like Rabot in Ghent, where that system was introduced, that is playing a significant role in that economy. People are doing a lot of effort to get that currency. and it improves their lifestyle. I would say what we need is, first of all, currently the entire social structure, legal structure among others, has been designed for perfecting the industrial age. When you have an activity, you fall in three categories. You either have a job, you're unemployed, or you're a volunteer. Right? In other words, you're not supposed to make a living in any other way than in the job. Why? Why do we do that? When you're pushing people to have a job and the jobs aren't there, that's fine if you're having the jobs, but if you can't create the jobs, which is where we are in Europe now, why not create a fourth category? Okay? Which is basically civic activity. Right? Which you can make a living, and a living to make a living on, not just survive, in another economy. And another economy can be created by the city. The city can decide that if you want to live in Maastricht, you need to bring 20 Maastrichts. And a Maastricht is an hour of service to the city. And if you don't do it, that's fine, but then you need to buy, with euros or whatever else, from other people who've done more. Okay? So you create an economy, and you give it value by requiring a tax for payable in it. That would get it up to the level where you're talking about.
So you're saying basically local currency, or the...
Yes?
Get you to come. So you're saying basically volunteer systems will, or this force of volunteering and social activity will...
That's a subset. I'm also talking business to business. Okay? Why should businesses not be capable of creating a currency? And pay each other with it? Like they do in Switzerland.
Right. So I'm not asking whether that it's not possible. I'm on your side of this issue, but I'm just wondering how will it ever grow to be 20 or 30% of people using
There are two answers to that. The first one is a collapse of the existing system. Okay? People do that. Argentina has survived 5 years without national money by creating creditos. Exactly what we're talking about. Okay? And the second way is just stop blocking anybody who is successful in creating something, which is what we currently do. And then you see which ones will emerge. And by the way, I'm also talking about the global currency. The Terra that I was mentioning to you earlier, which I actually almost skipped, is a global currency. I mean, the unit of account is $1 million, right? So not for peanuts. It's basically standardized accounting trade. We already have 50% of global trade doing this. This is not marginal. It doesn't have to be marginal. Okay? If there's a need for it, people will use it. That's my claim. Yes.
Actually, it kind of follows on from what you were saying. But how do you see this really progressing as a timescale from here to the transformation of the system you see? Like, do you really think it has to be a monetary collapse or something that's going to like spark it? Or with these community projects, can they start building up and building up? Because I feel like there's always going to be the people on top are going to want to stop this from happening. So is it going to require a collapse for it to actually occur, or can it start building up already?
I have looked at 5,000 years of monetary history, and I have never found one example of preventive change. Never. And the reason it has to do with power connection. Okay? So, for example, the Terra, that several big businesses interested in doing it, but it didn't want to move until, because it would upset the dollars, the Americans. Okay? So, you know, if you're British Petroleum or Shell, you didn't want to have the Americans upset at you, and that's why they didn't do the Terra. So that explains why there's no preventive change. Initially, 20 years ago, I thought it was possible because of the arguments and the technologies being available that it would emerge slowly and work. Unfortunately today, I've come to the same conclusion that Candesu was the ex-president of the IMF, who told me 6 months ago the crisis wasn't big enough in 2007, 2008. We're going to have a new one. I'm afraid that's true.
That's kind of sad. It kind of leaves you feeling, what can we really do? We just have to sit and wait for everything to explode.
I'm very deeply disappointed. we seem to be hit on the head in order before it to change.
At least these projects are making a small difference.
Huh?
I like very much your story of this dual or multiple currency, because why should it be dual? I mean, I like very much your dual or multiple currency story, because it can be anything. I mean,
yes.
You're talking about a very evolutionary
as
system.
long as you can agree with the community.
But the question is, well, I think one question is which has not been discussed yet is how much currency will you issue and how will it evolve over time? I mean, I think that's an important question to keep the system under control.
I have not gotten into this, the scientific bit. I said there was a range for diversity. Okay? You can have, a monoculture is never big enough. It's not diverse enough. But you can have too many. Let's assume that every Dutch person starts its currency. You know what will happen? Nothing. There won't be, everything will be stuck. You will not have any exchanges. Everybody will start arguing, why don't you use my currency? Okay? And they would have stagnation. When you have too much diversity, you end up with stagnation. So there are two ways for a system to die, a complex flow system. One of them is a crash when you don't have enough diversity, and another one is stagnation if you have too much. So there is somewhere a range, and I don't know what it is, because we've never gotten there yet, where I would say, you know, fine. But normally, so better, more is not always better. I agree with you.
No, that's one point, but the other point is how much of a currency is there in the system? That's all, that was...
Well, actually it depends. Okay, let me
put it differently.
A mutual credit system, like a time banking, how much currency there is? Zero.
Sorry.
It's a mutual credit. I do something for you, I have a credit, you have a debit. There's always enough, never too much. If it takes 5 hours, you'll take 5 hours and 5 hours there.
So you can never...
So the sum total is zero.
So you'll never have inflation in your currency systems?
No, there's going to be an hour, it's tends to be 60 minutes.
Well, a guilder tends, or a euro tends to be 100 cents. I mean, this is what the answer. I mean.
An hour is time. We're talking the currency as being time.
Yeah, but you were talking about the Maastricht example you gave, and you said, well, you can buy a Maastricht coin or something like that. But then
that would be issued. That would not be a mutual credit system. That would be issued by the city.
Ah, issued by?
By the city.
And how much does the city issue? This is my question.
The first question is, what are you trying to do? In the case of Ghent, okay, we have 7,000 people. Okay, we have 500 or 600 gardens. The cost of the garden is 150 torques per year. So by the 500 by 150, that's the minimum. So that is what we need minimum. You can do a little more because, you know, don't do 20 times more. Because you have a sink. Determine your sink, and from there you can guess. But in mutual credit systems, which is the one I recommend as first analysis tool, there's always sufficiency. The sum is always zero. Yes?
First of all, thank you very much for the inspiring presentation. There is a hot topic about, hot discussion about Bitcoin. Does it fit into your theory, and isn't it annoying that Bitcoin is mapped to dollar every day? They say today Bitcoin is $50, $500, tomorrow it's $1,000, doesn't it?
Let me tell you one conversation we had over dinner here. And Bitcoin did come up. In the monetary domain, when something is important, they never talk about it. And when it's not important, they have a hell of a lot of noise. And the Bitcoin example is the second type. Okay? There are two things of Bitcoin. There is Bitcoin, the currency, which is everybody was talking about, including you now. And there's Bitcoin, the structure, the IT structure. The IT structure is important and is interesting and new. The Bitcoin currency is bullshit. and will not be there 3 years from now. That's my guess. It has imitated two features of the conventional money, which happen to be bad features. One of them, it's a speculative tool, and it is not transparent. Okay? So that's one application of the Bitcoin structure, which happens to be not an interesting one. And that's why there's a lot of noise about it.
Can you explain why it's not transparent?
Pardon?
Can you explain why it's not transparent?
Well, you don't know who has it.
What do you mean the list is there for everybody to see?
Yeah, but is that your name? So that's the point. It reproduces from, in the case of the time banking system, I know who you are. Okay? In the case of the Toricus, we know who the people are. They have their name, their address. All right?
So you're saying the currency system should...
I'm not saying should. Some are transparent, some are not. And it depends what you want to do. And the Bitcoin is not transparent. It reproduces like we're doing with dollars. When I make an exchange with you, I'm not supposed to look at your account to send me the money.
I have a somewhat different question. About in the beginning you said the pensioners, they will be such a vast of people that the funds will not be able to supply enough money for them to live.
Yeah.
So what kind of suggestions would you give to pension funds in order to solve this problem? Because it's one of the basic assumptions in your model.
Redefine the problem. Redefine the problem. Currently, pensioners are considered a problem. Right? They're a cost, they're not being contributed to the economy. I think this is a very, very funny way of looking at people who have a lot of experience. I don't deny that some people may not be able to do work, but there's an enormous amount of things they can do, and the laws have been set up in order to make them not being able to do anything. Why would they not be able to participate in the fully IT ecosystem? Why would they not be able to do other things?
So you're saying skip the system?
Redefine the problem. Do you want to be defined as a pensioner, and I mean what that means, that you become a problem for society and that you cannot contribute anything? That's what they do now. And I'm saying there's a huge resource there, a human resource. People are desperate to try to contribute something. Something else than usual jobs. Why not have teachers? Why not have a society, what would say about universities, as part of the industrial age?
But that doesn't solve. That doesn't solve the right that the people who have worked for 40 years and they are expecting some kind of cash for the next 20 years. That doesn't solve that problem. You're just saying, well, redefine it, but they have the problem, they have the liability to provide these pension funds.
If you make a possibility of living in another currency than dollars, you can actually, or euros, you can create other opportunities. Currently we don't. There's one game. You either make euros or you die. And I'm saying, why couldn't you earn something completely different? It's redefine the problem. I'm not saying there's no difficulty here. There's a huge difficulty. And I don't think we're going to solve it, by the way. That's why I claim we're going to be forced to change. I mean, we could be preventive about it. I'm not saying I have a solution here to solve in the old model. But the same thing is true in education. I claim that we should become a society where everybody is a teacher and everybody's a learner. Take this literally. There's one country that does that, Lithuania. We're creating a currency for learning. The whole nation. And then the elderly people can start earning that currency. Okay? If they want to. If they don't want to, they can do something else. And they can still live on their pension to whatever it is. But it won't be enough. That's what I claim. It's another way of seeing, another way of tackling each of the problems. We had another question over dinner. The issue of healthcare. I claim we have no healthcare. There's no country in the world that has healthcare. We have medical care. The solution is to create a wellness token. Have an incentive for people to be healthy.
That's the Chinese.
Exactly. That's what I say. I mean, redefining the problem, you find other solutions. But if you're stuck in the same model with a single currency, can't get out.
I have a bit another question. I didn't really get how the different currencies then interact with each other. Because you can say, okay, we have a local currency, we have a regional currency, we have a national or a world currency, but how do they interact with each other? Or do you want to have, for different transactions, different currencies, and then the transactions to other currencies are blocked? How does that work? How does the diversity
some currencies need to be convertible. Business currencies need to be convertible. The C3 I was mentioning, the Terra, are convertible currencies. Some others are not. The time currencies are not convertible into national money.
Yeah, but if you have a convertible currency, then don't you have if you have convertible currencies, then you have the same problem as there is now, that people can trade with them and say, okay, I'm going to change it because I can get better things with this currency, and then I trade back or something, that you actually have a similar system then, but just that you have more currencies and the same problem.
Each currency has an objective. Okay? Unique. There is nothing we can say in general about all complementary currencies. Okay? All of them are niches of different types. Okay? So, some things, the risk you're running is true, what you're saying. For others, it's not. In the case of time banking, or in the case of Fourier Kipu, there's no convertibility. The only thing you get back is services of the same type. Payment. Right? If you don't, and nobody is obliged to do this. This is not obligatory currency. So if you don't like it, don't do it. But you have a new possibility, another opportunity than the conventional game. That's the way it is. And it's true for each one of the systems. Now, you may have in the Maastricht 10 systems, but you may not be interested in accepting one. If you have an elderly parent, you may be interested in that currency because it actually helps you take care of your father or your mother. Okay? You may not be interested in another currency, that somewhere else is important. If you don't have your mother living here, you may not be interested in this currency. So you may have 10 currencies in just like a club. Belonging to a club in a city, in London, there are 50 clubs. Is that too many? No. Because I could choose to be in one or two. And I choose. And if I don't like one, any of them, I can start a new one. All right? That's the reality we're dealing with. It's not, you don't have to participate in everything. Only those that you're interested in. And it gives you a different selection. There's more than one game in town. That's all the point.
It's 9:30. So I suggest that we will leave it to this.